Welcome guys, and thanks for downloading this video. I hope it's going to be helpful, so let's just go straight into it. Alright, so this one is just my process flow. I'm not going to go into the details, but I usually use this pack when I'm kind of showing people what I do and how I can help. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But let's just move straight on. I will introduce myself. So my name is Janani. People call me JK, Jan, Janice, you name it. I'm the director and founder of JK Buyers Advocate. Now, just quickly, I got into it because I do have a background in property law and also consulting for the big banks and the big four consultancy firms as well. So I have quite a robust experience and knowledge depth of the property buying purchase journey. Now, when I was in these roles, I did see a lot of people kind of getting into these property deals that they really shouldn't have, also investments that they shouldn't have, or home ownership they shouldn't have. They didn't quite know the process either, and I just felt like there was definitely a space to truly help buyers and help them understand their rights. I also want to help negotiate prices and getting the best deals for the buyers because it is your largest financial decision. Enough about me now. Let's get straight into what it is that you download today. So it is the top tips for buying property in Australia. All right, let's get straight into it. So the loan. Now, all of you know what a loan is. I'm probably not going to go into all that detail there, but what I wanted to point out in this topic of the loan is I really wanted to show that you shouldn't speak to just one broker or lender. That's right. So I know you might have a friend or a family, and it's great. Definitely support them in their businesses, of course. But it is always best in your best interest as a buyer to shop around and speak to at least three. This is why I say three, because some brokers and lenders may have access to different deals, different rates, and they might be able to get you something a little bit more in terms of a deal value. Another thing I wanted to also point out was if you're in a specific field as well, there's also brokers who specialize in specific fields. For example, if you're in the medical profession, there are brokers who specialize in the medical profession. So they understand things like your contracts, they understand, some sort of benefits you may be entitled to. So it may increase your lending capacity as well. This is just some tips here, but definitely takeaway is to speak to at least three and just shop around and see who can get you the best deal that's best suited to you. And hidden costs of budgeting. Okay, so there is a few I want to go through, but the big thing I want to point out here in budgeting is just stamp duty, number one. So stamp duty is something I think a lot of people forget about, but it's actually probably one of the largest costs that we may not account for when we're buying a home. It is quite a complicated way to calculate stamp duty, and I've laid it all out here for you to see what that calculation process is using an example there. However, the best way to kind of roughly calculate stamp duty is using the number 5.6%. Now, it's not exact, so don't expect that to be the exact amount, but it's roughly around 5.6%. And if you look at the numbers there, you can calculate it's approximately there. But if you think of a home that you want to buy and calculate on 5.6%, that's roughly going to be your stamp duty amount that you have to budget in as well when buying a home. Now, this is of course for your domestic residents, your PRs and your Australian citizens. If you are a foreign investor, there is a different calculation and there is a slightly higher stamp duty amount. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to chat about that, and that does fall under your category. All right, the next one here is land transfer. It's not as big as your stamp duty. However, looking at the example here, I've calculated on a $750,000 property, for example. The land transfer fee comes to about $1,845, which isn't anything to cough about, especially in this economy. So it is another fee that you should definitely look into and remember to account for when you are budgeting. There is a way they can calculate this amount. There is the Land Use Victoria calculator. I have popped it on the slides there. Again, if anyone wants a copy of this slide, feel free to reach out to me and I can send this to you because all the hyperlinks are there as well. All right, LMI. Now, I think a lot of you know what LMI is, but for those of you that don't, it is an insurance that the banks do take out if you pay a deposit less than 20%. So I'll say that again. If you pay a deposit to the bank less than 20%, say it's 10%, 5%, usually the banks will ask you to pay an amount as an insurance because you are paying less to the loan. So I've popped there some examples of what you can expect to pay in LMI. So for example, 15% deposit, you're expecting to pay anywhere between 5 to 7. If you're paying a 10% deposit, you're expecting to pay anywhere between 10 to 15, etc. What I want to point out here though, with the LMIs though, is that you may be entitled to some waivers or concessions based on your profession. And not everybody knows this. For example, there are some professions like the medical profession, teachers, lawyers, accountants, etc. And there's also specific family circumstances as well. For example, if you're a single parent, things like that, you may be able to get some sort of concessions and slight waivers on your LMI as well. So definitely speak to your broker and tell them your exact personal circumstances so they may be able to help you and tell you if you are entitled to these waivers. This could save you thousands of dollars if you do speak to your broker properly on that. All right, inspection fees. So all the clients that come through my door, I cannot stress to you enough how important this is. So a building and pest inspection combined together is anywhere about $600 to $800 in total. Every single client that I personally help, I always ensure that they are going to conduct this building and pest inspection. The reason why is that although it may seem like some money to cough up before you're signing the contract or before you are, you've bought the house properly, it is important to know that there are no structural issues with the house. I have heard so many horror stories time and time again of people just skipping this, thinking that the house looks modern, there's probably nothing wrong with it, or the house is a really nice old brick house and it's built properly back in the day. There's been issues time and time again. I've heard horrors of people ripping up the carpet and finding, moldy floorboards and just things that you just don't expect to see. So it's not worth the risk down the track. And it was very important that I would say budget in for these inspection costs as well, because it is worth your while. Home and building contents insurance. So basically, if you do take out an insurance, most banks basically require that you take out a building insurance. So this is something we may not remember or we might forget about, that there's actually a building insurance. This is different to home and contents. This is the actual building insurance for the actual structure. So this can be anywhere between $1,500. It is just important to make sure that you remember that. And when you do take out your insurance, that it does sort of cover things like your fire, theft, and natural disasters as well, especially those in Queensland. All right, and strata fees as well. So this is the last one I want to go through. If you are buying a home that is on a body corporate, so for example, your apartments or your villas or townhouses, and you've got any shared property on the land, so it can range anywhere between $2,000, $10,000, etc. And the reason why there's such a big discrepancy is because strata can vary greatly. For example, if you're buying a townhouse that's only on a block of 4 other townhouses and the only thing that you're all sharing is a common driveway, your strata is probably going to be somewhere around $2,000 a year. So you have to pay this every year to the owner's corporation company to maintain that shared driveway. If, for example, you're buying an apartment in this very fancy, swanky new building that's got like the saunas, the steam rooms and everything, your owner's corporation could be anywhere between $8,000 plus, because it's for the maintenance and management of all those amenities that you have access to. So the tip I would make sure is just to make sure to chat to the owner's corporation company prior to buying the property as well. Obviously, your conveyancer will also have to look into this too, but your buyer's advocate would also be the one to speak to you as well. Okay, inspections. So top things to look out for. So obviously, buyer's advocate, we look out for things for you when we go on inspections. And these are a couple of ones I wanted to point out that, I feel are, quite essential. So cracks in the walls and ceilings, obviously. Just make sure that, have a bit of a look around to make sure there's nothing major that's happening that's going to create any problems. Uneven floors. So when you're walking, just have pay a bit of attention to your feet on the floor and make sure that there's nothing major that's like, major cracks that you're feeling underneath. Any dampness and mold on the walls. So if you sort of see any bumps coming out from under the wallpaper or the paint, or you see some moisture coming through the ceilings or roofs, like leaking pipes, look out for those as well. I also turn on all the taps to check the water pressure, and I also turn all the lights on and off as well. I know it sounds a bit OCD, but trust me, like checking these basic things is just going to save you headaches and making sure you're moving into a house that actually works properly. The remote controls for heating and cooling systems, so I'll always press a button on and off and check all that. Checking the gutters visually. So just seeing if there's anything stuck in there. It's generally looking quite like it's operating properly. There's no major cracks or anything like that. If the windows are closed, now here's a little bit of a tip. So if you walk into an inspection and you notice that there's music playing in the inspection open home and the windows are closed, I always would ask to reduce the music a little bit down and open the windows just to hear if there's any loud external noises, like if there's a lot of car noises coming around or construction noises, something that might have a big impact on your house and you living in there down the track. So just have a listen to hear if there is music playing. And lastly, if there is some sort of like nice scent in the house or like a candle burning, I would try and see and just make sure that there's no smells that they're trying to cover up. Like is there mold or is there something that's rotting away? And I'll just like look out for those as well. So hopefully that does help you. Okay. So like I mentioned to you earlier, I am a property lawyer as well. So for my clients, when I help them out, I personally actually review the contracts for them without sending it across because it just makes it a much faster process. So we're able to get offers into agents a lot quicker. And I'm not having to wait for the turnaround time of sending it off to a conveyancer and then bring it back a couple of days later. I do it there and then. So I want to point out a couple of the pointers if you're looking at a contract without, very quickly as well. Some couple of things I want you to make sure you look out for. Okay, great. So the must-knows that you should have looking for in a contract. So I know this might sound very simple and basic to you, but the first thing I want to point out is that the vendor's name needs to match on the contract what the name they've signed. You'll be surprised by the amount of times that you might see like Bob signed and it's like, a Jill on the name. Like it's crazy. And make sure that it's dated properly as well. Very simple, but it would actually save you a lot of issues down the track. Okay, the next two, subject to finance and building and pests. So these are two little boxes. You'll probably see like a couple of pages down in the contract, maybe page 3, 4, that sort of page there. You'll see two little boxes. One says subject to finance, another one says subject to building and pests. Make sure that these boxes are ticked. Now, these are for you as the buyer. It's your benefit that these are ticked. What this basically means is that if the subject to finance box is ticked and the subject to building and pest is ticked, it means that if for whatever reason your finance drops through, like your loan amount doesn't come through as what you thought it would be, you're able to get out of the contract. If that box is not ticked, it means that you're stuck in the contract even if your finance doesn't come through. For the building and pest, if you do conduct a building and pest inspection, which I hope all of you do that, if you do conduct a building and pest inspection and that box is ticked, and let's say the building and pest inspection report comes out with a few issues, you can leave the contract. If you don't tick that box, you can't leave the contract, even if you do find major structural issues with the property. So it is so important that as a buyer, you're ticking both those boxes to make sure that you're going to be covered in any of those scenarios. Okay, perfect. The next thing there is the purchase price and deposit amounts are accurate, common sense, but again, you'd be surprised. Inclusion and exclusion, so things like your fitting fixtures, so if you wanted like the dishwasher or you wanted light fittings in there specifically, or if you really wanted the garden shed to stay, you need to make sure that's all listed out in the contract so there's no outs down the track. Again, if the property is on a strata, like I mentioned earlier, I went through this in depth, but if it is on a strata and it has shared common property, make sure you're make sure you're checking the owner's corporate certificate in the contract and also reading the minutes as well, which is towards the end of the contract as well. Lastly, checking overlays and zonings and easements. So without further ado, going into the easements as well. So for understanding easements and overlays, basically you just need to review the certificate of title in the contract to see this. This is usually, towards the start of the contract as well, before the major attachments and documents. But here you will see the certificate and you'll be able to see whether there is an easement or overlay. It will be written on that contract. You can understand what these easements may be because there'll be like a certain set of words or numbers, and you can check out that in this URL. I've put it there. So it's mapshare.vic.gov.au for Victorian properties. Each state has its own one. So whatever state you're from, you can look it up by typing in easement overlays in your state's name. They generally would have that. You can also call the council to confirm any easements or boundary issues on your land. So the council will know if your specific property has any easement issues on it. And ask the council if there's any future developments going to be happening in your area. Will there be any future developments that are going to impact, your overlays and your easements or your specific property? Again, your buyer's advocate does all this for you as well. But this is tips that you can look out for when you're understanding your easements and overlays. This is just a screenshot I took from the Victorian website. So as you can see, there's different color blocks in there into the map that's showing the different overlays, and each overlay means different things. So for example, there could be something like a heritage overlay over a few blocks of land. This would basically mean that it's a heritage listing and you can't actually demolish the property or do certain things to the property. So this could really impact what you want to do with the house or the home, and it's really good to know these things because it can definitely impact the value of your house and what you want down the future for it as well. That tip does help there. All right, properties on strata. Okay, so one way to make sure that you're not going to make your money go to waste is to ensure that the strata company that you are going to be dealing with on this property that you are looking to buy in is not a doozy company. There are unfortunately a few companies out there that just do not act in the best interest for the residents, and they're not the most organized, and it can be a massive headache to deal with. Even small issues that need to get fixed that you are paying them annually for don't tend to get fixed easily, and it can be quite a headache. So if you are looking to buy a home that's on a strata, so like I said, these are homes that have shared areas and spaces, whether they're apartments, units, or townhouses, it's best to look and see who the body corporate company is in this scenario and contact them. Also check out on Google any reviews that you may see. If you see any terrible reviews of them, I would try and steer away from that because it can be an issue down the track. I would also go visit the apartment complex and walk around the common spaces. If possible as well, speak to the building manager on ground. The building manager is generally like a completely independent body, not really associated with the owners corporation per se. So they will be very happy to tell you what is currently happening in the apartment blocks or the complex, and tell you any current issues and problems or anything like that and how they are currently working. Another thing is speaking to any tenants that you may see walking around there. But this is my absolute golden tip here, and I really I feel like if you do this, it'll be really beneficial for you. But in the contract of sale, if you are looking at a specific property, you will see, if you scroll down quite down to the bottom of the contract, you will see that there are owners corporation minutes. Now, these minutes will outline all the current issues that are currently happening in the complex, any future financial endeavors that they're going to be going through, and any current problems or legal battles or anything like that. Understanding this scenario and what is currently happening in the property will allow you to know whether you're going to be facing any potential financial problems down the future or any issues with the apartment complex or the common property of the townhouses or units in the future. So this is something I would really recommend doing before buying a home if it's on strata. Again, like I said previously, your buyer's advocate can definitely help you with this as well if it's something that you're not too sure about, but I would highly recommend you looking into this. And auctions. Okay, what I want to point out with auctions, I'm sorry for going really fast, but I really want to get all this information to you as much as I could, as quickly as I could. But the tip I wanted you to remember for auctions is that auctions are unconditional. So what that means is that the second that the hammer hits down and you've said your price, everything in the contract is as it is. Like, even if you've ticked a certain box or you've written the conditions, that's what it is. You can't, there's no takebacks, and it's unconditional at that time. So make sure that before you go into an auction and before you start bidding, make sure that you've done all your due diligence. So that's your owner's corporation checks, your council checks, your contract review checks, your building and pest inspections, your zoning checks, your fire checks, everything. Make sure you've done all of that before you go into the auction and bid, because you can't go back on that after that. I can't stress to you how important that is. Again, if you ever want help in all of this, I'm very happy to assist, as what a buyer's advocate does. However, if you're doing this on your own, please make sure you've done all those things I just listed to make sure that you are going to bid for the right property. And there is no cooling off period as well for a home in auction. So most other homes, when you sign a contract that don't go to auction, they have what's called a cooling off period, which is 3 business days, which allow you to exit the contract if you have a change of mind for whatever reason you're not able to do a certain thing. You can get out of the contract. At an auction, that's it. You can't get out. So please be mindful. And I've just popped in there just for a bit of, this is in Victoria, but the current suburbs with the highest clearance rates at the moment, that's kind of going around. So I thought that was really interesting just to pop in and show. I hope that helps, guys. I hope that this has been valuable to you, and I hope that this has given you some tips that are going to lead you into the market and take you above the other potential people looking on the market. Feel free to reach out to me if you want a copy of this pack. If you want to have a chat, I'm very happy to chat with you and very happy to help as well if you ever need. But generally speaking, good luck on your property hunt. Good luck whether it's an investment or a dream home that you're looking for. I hope that you get it. I hope that you find it well, and I hope it's a beautiful journey for you as well. All right, thanks guys. Bye.